Today is our annual young adult-led service. I just want us to take a moment to be amazed by the beauty and generosity and grace of the young adults of this congregation, those who are speaking and singing today, but all the rest of them as well. So I asked Haley in the chalice lighting, and May and Grace and Marisa, who's joining us from her home in Eugene, Oregon, through the miracle of technology, to just talk to us today, to tell us who they are and how they are. Actually was a little bit more directed with Grace because I wanted her to tell us how she got through the pandemic as an ER nurse, because her story is amazing. In fact, you all amaze me with your strength and honesty and humility. So thank you for sharing your lives with us today.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is May Brackett. My pronouns are she, her. A year ago, I stood up here and proudly told this congregation that I would be starting my big girl job soon. I've been at my big girl job for a little over a year now, and I thought I'd tell you how I got here. So first, I should tell you what I mean by big girl job. The word career comes with a lot of responsibility and maturity, which are two things I'm very allergic to. Not actually, but it is a word that carries a lot of weight. And at age 17, fresh out of high school, that weight was heavy on my shoulders. When I was a kid, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I don't think I really even wanted to grow up. And I still don't, but back to 17-year-old me. I enrolled in Middlesex Community College, hoping to figure out what I wanted to do. I ended up majoring in computer science and would eventually decide to transfer to University of Maine in Farmington. Why the move? At the time, I would tell you they had a really good computer science program, but actually, I just wanted to get away from home. My sister had an apartment in the same town, so I figured it would feel like home away from home. And it did, until she moved out of that apartment for a job in Ohio. And suddenly, Farmington felt like an empty town, and I felt like an empty person. I struggled for a few months in a single dorm before finally deciding it would be best if I withdrew. And so I did. Here I was, a college dropout, back at my parents' house before spring. I hid from my friends and limited how much I went out. I didn't want anyone to find out what a big failure I was. But that took its toll on me, and one muddy spring day in May, I voluntarily admitted myself to the mental health ward at Emerson. My stay lasted a week, but it felt like forever. I couldn't wait to come home. Eventually, I got things back on track, re-enrolled at Middlesex in liberal arts, and began taking classes again. But there was still something I was missing. That be-all, end-all career, the one I could devote myself to. Do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, they say. But what did I love? All this time, one thing had been consistent for me, and still is, karate. I've been at Luth's Family Karate for 15 years now, and when I tell people about it, I always say the same thing. It's my favorite thing in the world. And to 23-year-old me, it was a no-brainer. I could intertwine my career with the thing I loved most. So I decided to change my major to Japanese language and literature and decided to change my college to University of Massachusetts Amherst. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why enroll in a big university again? And the answer I told myself was, I needed to make up for my past. I needed to prove I could do it. The year was 2020. It was February, and I was, again, having a horrible time adjusting to college life. I was coming home every weekend to spend time with my family. Once I came back to my room one night to find my roommate gone. She'd moved out, and it all came rushing back to me, just like it had been in the single dorm in Farmington, cold, isolated, and lonely. I couldn't do it again. I withdrew the next day, but I wasn't going to let it weigh me down this time. My mom told me to just own it, and I did. Fortunately for me, and unfortunately for the rest of the world, the pandemic hit, and I didn't have to explain anything to anyone. It gave me time to realize my career didn't have to be the be-all, end-all. It could just be something I was capable of doing and just kind of liked. And karate could remain my ongoing hobby and part-time job. I'm currently a third-degree black belt. That fall, I enrolled once again at Middlesex, determined to earn some kind of degree. And I'm proud to say that in spring of 2021, I graduated with an associate's in liberal arts. It took me 7 years for a normally 2-year degree, but I did it. And the college chapters of my life were over. Finally, I had arrived at my backup plan, cosmetology school. And why not? I liked hair. I dyed mine and my friends a couple of times. I spent that summer researching schools I could attend and stumbled upon one within walking distance of Middlesex. And in fall of 2021, I began a new journey. For those of you unfamiliar with it, all hairstylists must be licensed by the state of Massachusetts. In order to take the licensing exam, you must acquire 1,000 hours of experience. And boy, was it a grind. Through the sleet and the snow, the mud and the rain, I was clocking in. Even in the summer when the weather was too good to spend inside, I was there in the school salon doing hair. And in August of 2022, I received my certificate of completion. I began working at Supercuts in Westford as a receptionist that October and passed my license exam in January of 2023. By April of this year, I was cutting hair on the floor, and that's where I've been ever since. So what's the big takeaway here? What did I learn? So much, my friends. So much about myself and about life. But I have a few specific messages I want to give. For my younger kids, you don't have to know what you want to be when you grow up. Just try your best to grow up happy and healthy. For my teenagers and college-age friends, college is not the be-all, end-all. It isn't even required. Explore your options and don't be afraid to change your mind. Own it. And to the adults and those older than me, it is never too late to try something new. Take a class, learn something, be a lifelong student. I was invited to this church last year by the Preston family. I came here unsure of myself and uncertain about my future, and in many ways I still am. But I want to give you all one more message, one that I heard from our dear Lee in a sermon that assured me I was in the right place. Their words were as follows. At the core of Unitarian Universalist is being able to show up and worship together with different beliefs and practices because the center is shared humanity and love that are unassailably deep enough and wide enough to hold us all in belonging. And because we are simultaneously committed to paying attention to those folks at the edges who have so often felt like they don't belong. Thank you all for giving me a place to belong, and thank you for belonging to me. And I leave you with a quote from Richard Blanco that I learned at the same sermon. We're the promise of one people, one breath declaring to one another, I see you, I need you, I am you. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm honored to be here to speak to you on this weekend after Thanksgiving. Elea has asked me to give a reflection of my time working as a registered nurse during the COVID-19 pandemic. Yes, on the weekend after Thanksgiving. As many of you know, I grew up in this congregation, and this place is home to me. The last time I spoke to all of you, I was about to embark on the journey of nursing school. This was more than a decade ago, at this point. I graduated over 7 years ago, and in that time, I've worked in a variety of environments, including inpatient pediatrics, general medicine and telemetry, intensive care, and most recently, the emergency department, all as a registered nurse. During the first 2 years of the pandemic, I actually worked 3 jobs, one in the ICU, another in an emergency department, and the third volunteering with Mass Response, Medical Reserve Corps Critical Care Division, which mostly staffed the field hospitals. I don't know if any of you remember, but 2020 was supposed to be the International Year of the Nurse and Midwife, as declared by the World Health Organization. There was a lot of speculation about what that may mean in the fall of 2019, before any of us knew what was going to happen. But I don't think anyone thought there was going to be a global pandemic. In early 2020, I was a bit of a global pandemic denier. I wasn't worried about it at all. There were only a handful of cases in China. I thought it was under control. I couldn't have been more wrong. I was an ICU nurse at the time, and our nurses had a conference call with the nurses working on the front line in northern Italy. And they were trying to tell us what they were seeing, what was working, what wasn't working, how to best take care of these patients. And that was, probably early March of 2020. And at that point, it was clear SARS-CoV-2 was coming to the US if it wasn't here already. The unit I had been working on prior to the pandemic quickly converted to being the dirty ICU. That means we would only take COVID patients as the situation in New York City evolved. The pandemic hadn't really hit Massachusetts yet, so it was a ghost town where we just sat with our fears, floated to other parts of the hospital to try to help out with the run-of-the-mill problems. But within probably a week, it was upon us. Not only was our unit full, but every bed in the hospital. Every one of our patients was intubated, paralyzed, sedated, and prone. For those of you not aware what those words mean, they're the sickest of the sick. All of our therapies were failing. Working with these patients has brought extraordinary challenges. Most of us, myself included, went through this period of intense anxiety of the unknown. In particular, I was afraid of bringing the virus home to my family without proper PPE available. I stripped at my door, I ran to the shower, I bathed in chlorhexidine. I have coworkers that slept in tents in their garages for months. The urgency of the pandemic didn't allow us to sit in fear for very long. We did our best to protect ourselves with what we had available and provided the best care we could. There was not a lot of questioning. We showed up and we did what we had to do. If I'm being honest, it's been mostly terrible. There's been a mass exodus of nurses from the bedside, which has left fewer of us to do more work as the crisis has evolved. About a year into the pandemic, I left the ICU for the emergency department. This was the time of lungs shredding seemingly overnight, when we asked every hospitalized patient diagnosed with COVID-19 what funeral home they would prefer on admission to the hospital. When the morgue was full and there was a refrigerator truck outside the hospital. The day I put 14 people in body bags in one 12-hour shift was a particular low. I remember thinking on my drive home that I know why people do drugs. I didn't get it before. I'd never seen death on this scale before. To want so desperately to save your people, but be unable to. There were so many people sick and dying, and just not enough hands or resources to make it all work. We were pushed to the limits of what was possible in attempting to care for these people when the world needed us. I'm so grateful that while my coworkers and I were working bedside, there were pharmaceutical research and development companies working around the clock on new modalities to treat COVID infection and develop vaccines. There were medications available for clinical trials in our sickest patients right from the start. And on December 17th, 2020, I received my first COVID vaccine, and I felt like I could breathe for the first time since the start of the pandemic. The feelings were complicated. Although I felt worthy and in some ways entitled to a vaccine, I also felt guilty that this resource was being offered to me when there were populations at higher risk who had yet to be offered vaccination. When I was a new nurse, this was pre-pandemic, I struggled with the reality that we can't save everyone. Hospitals are places people come to get well, but also where people come to die. That's just how it works. Being a critical care and emergency nurse, I've always seen a lot more of the dying than the living. The goal can't be saving everyone every time. That's an impossibility. So even though I can't invent new medications or materialize a new set of lungs with my mind, I can do my very best to keep you alive long enough for your loved ones to come say goodbye. I want to talk a little more about the radical acts of humanity specific to nursing in the COVID era. It's been like no other time. The scarcity of resources, the heightened emotions, the changing policies and procedures. Families were often not able to be at the bedside of their loved ones, so we were the stand-in loved ones. Taking nursing advocacy to a new level. We used our phones for FaceTime and Zoom calls until the hospitals purchased iPads. I strived for twice daily family updates. Most days that happened. And when all else failed, we kept our patients clean and free of pain. We sat at bedside to ensure no people died alone. Although I would not go as far as to say I have the best job ever, I do have the best coworkers ever. They're my family, and in most senses of the word. I, along with all my coworkers, decided that the best place to be during a global pandemic was at the highest concentration of virus. We share a compulsion to be at the place of crisis to try and make things better, to heal bodies and minds, regardless of whether modern medicine has anything to offer. And there where I get my strength. Healthcare workers are tired. We've been tired, but we keep showing up for the same reason most of us started. We want to help you. We want to ease pain and to bring life back. We're not heroes or angels or any of the things well-meaning people call us. Despite it all, or maybe because of it, I'm glad I became a nurse. Okay. I'm sorry I cried the whole time. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marisa, and I'm going to share a reflection with you all. This year, I turned 30. It was a marker, as one might guess, of the change that has been brewing in my life. The most significant shifts of this birthday, though, have been subtle and internal. You can probably imagine that nothing drastic happened on that day. No major epiphanies or career breakthroughs, no wedding vows or life-altering moments. But it was a culmination of the slow process of transformation that has been taking place over years. This birthday was an external symbol of my inner experience, the experience of my deeper self emerging into a new phase, crossing over a threshold into womanhood. I have realized that although the process of stepping into adulthood has external markers, so much of it at its core is a quiet relationship we build with ourselves. I believe in order to live a rich, vibrant, meaningful adult life, we must learn to answer the call to dance with our shadows, to enter the void, to be in the emptiness, and be brave enough to be with ourselves there. Who am I when no one is looking? This is a question I've been asking myself. Who am I when no one is looking? I have had a lot of time to examine this question this year because I've had more time alone than ever in my life. In my process of entering into womanhood, one of the biggest thresholds I have crossed was the end of a 5-year partnership. The death of the most significant romantic relationship I have ever had. I am beginning to learn that death is often the marker of soul transformation. The death of a person, a job, a relationship, a part of ourselves. My journey into womanhood has been laced with the letting go of parts of myself I have known for a long time. Parts I had outgrown but clung to in fear, my fear of change and loss. A year and a half ago, I started living solo, on my own, in a studio apartment for the first time in my life. My home has been a radical mirror for me, showing me over and over who I am when no one is looking. Sometimes who I find is confronting. Sometimes it's relieving. Sometimes I want to run. Sometimes I wish I never had to leave because I'm so content. But I have begun to befriend this process over and over, showing up in the unknown with myself. Living alone has been an unbelievable declaration of sovereignty and self-care. It has been a map and a mirror for my inner world, a clear reflection of the tides of change that have been taking place within me. I have never been this version of myself. And I am honored and grateful to say that I love her. She is discerning and grounded, committed to truth and willing to be alone with herself. She is fiery and dedicated. She is unwavering and fierce. She is a visionary and a creative. I am proud and excited to say that through the trials and challenges of life, I have been creating and co-leading so much in my community. Song circles, women's circles, workshops, retreats, rites of passages, wedding ceremonies, initiations, and rituals. I have also been tending a podcast called The Undergrowth and been a part of a musical trio called Portal, a band in service to collective healing. And I am pleased to share that we are actually currently working on recording our first album, Songs on Grief and Transformation. These projects and offerings have been lighting my soul on fire. And so much of it was birthed through change, forged in the flames of challenge. I love who I have become. I love the woman I am and the life I am leading. May we all be willing to go to the depths, to harvest the gems hidden in the caves of our own hearts. I am almost certain that there is nothing more important in these times than to look within and to learn to love ourselves fully. Grit, it makes the pearl. Pain gives way for beauty. Forgive what breaks your heart. Path is trying to shape you. Grit, it makes the pearl. Pain gives way for beauty. Forgive what breaks your heart. Path is trying to shape you. Shape you. Shape you. Thank you so much.